The rain was pouring down like it wanted to wash away every trace of me from this earth. I stood there on the front porch, my clothes soaked through, shivering uncontrollably as the cold bit into my bones. My suitcase lay at my feet, thrown out like yesterday's trash. "Get out, Emma. This house was never yours anyway." My half-brother Jake's voice echoed in my ears, sharp as a knife. Beside him, my half-sister Mia smirked, arms crossed, while my stepmother watched from the doorway with cold eyes. How could they do this to me? After Dad died just 2 weeks ago, the bullying that had simmered for years exploded into full hatred. They called me the outsider, the reminder of Dad's first marriage. "You're not blood like us," they'd sneer. Now, with Dad gone, they didn't waste any time. The will was read. The house went to them. And I was left with nothing but bruises on my heart and a few $100s in my bank account from my part-time job. Tears mixed with the rain on my face as I dragged my suitcase down the street. "Where do I go now?" I whispered to the empty night. At 20 years old, I was suddenly homeless, abandoned by the only family I had left. I spent that first night in a bus shelter, curled up against the wind, wondering if this was the end. Days turned into a blur of shelters and park benches. The hunger gnawed at me. The fear kept me awake. I scrolled through my phone endlessly, looking for any cheap room, any place to call my own. Then I saw an old listing for a house in the countryside, about an hour away. "Abandoned fixer, upper, needs serious work. Selling as is for $5. It seemed too good to be true, but I was desperate. With my savings and a small loan from a kind coworker, I made the call. The owner was eager to get rid of it. Unpaid taxes, years of neglect. Within a week, it was mine. The drive there in the old beat-up car I borrowed felt like heading into the unknown. The house sat at the end of an overgrown driveway, vines climbing its faded walls, windows boarded up. It looked haunted, lonely, just like me. Pushing open the creaky front door, the musty smell of dust and decay hit me hard. Cobwebs hung like curtains, and the floorboards groaned under my weight, as if protesting my presence. But it was a roof. My roof. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope, however small. "I can fix this," I told myself, voice echoing in the empty rooms. With what little money I had left, I bought basic tools, paint, and cleaning supplies from thrift stores. Days blurred into nights as I scrubbed floors on my hands and knees, the rough wood scraping my skin. The cold drafts whistled through cracks, making me shiver, but I pushed on. One evening, while tearing up old wallpaper in the upstairs bedroom, my hand brushed against something hard behind the plaster. A small metal box, sealed tight. Heart pounding, I pried it open. Inside were yellowed letters and photographs. My breath caught as I recognized faces my grandparents, Mom's parents, who had passed when I was little. There I was as a child, smiling in their arms on the front porch of this very house. Tears welled up. "Grandma, Grandpa," I whispered. The letters were addressed to me. "Dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means we've gone, and your father has followed the path we feared. This house has always been yours. We built it with love, and we left it in a trust for you alone, away from the complications of your father's new family. They know nothing of this place." My hands trembled. Complications? I kept reading late into the night by flashlight, the wind howling outside like it was sharing my shock. There were legal papers too, a will, notarized, leaving the property and a small savings account in my name. But why was it abandoned? Why was it sold so cheap? As I continued renovating over the next weeks, more secrets revealed themselves. In the attic, behind a false wall I accidentally knocked through while patching leaks, I found a locked chest. Inside, more documents, jewelry that belonged to Grandma, and bank statements showing a trust fund that had been accumulating interest for years, enough to fix the house properly, and then some. The suspense built every night with strange creaks and whispers of the old wood. But now they felt like messages from the past. I started to feel less alone, like my grandparents were watching over me, guiding me through the repairs. The kitchen came alive with fresh paint. The leaky roof was patched, And slowly, the house transformed from a wreck into a warm home. But the real climax came when I decided to research the property history online one rainy afternoon. That's when the pieces fell into place with a gut-wrenching twist. Public records showed that my stepmother and half-siblings had known about this house all along. Dad had mentioned it vaguely before he got sick, but they had pressured him to ignore the grandparents' wishes. When the trust lapsed due to some legal technicality they exploited, they tried to claim it but failed because it was in my name. Instead of telling me, they let the taxes go unpaid, hoping it would be seized and sold to strangers cheaply or better. Disappear. They wanted me to have nothing, to erase my connection to my mother's side. My blood ran cold. All the bullying, the eviction, it wasn't just hatred. It was calculated to keep me from discovering my fair inheritance. They had Dad's house, the cars, the savings, but this modest home and the trust was meant to be my protection, my fresh start. Set aside by the grandparents who saw the family dynamics clearly, anger surged through me like a storm. I confronted them the next day, documents in hand, voice steady despite the fear. Jake and Mia's faces paled when I showed them the will. Stepmom tried to deny it, but the proof was undeniable. There were tears. Accusations flew both ways, but in the end, they backed down. Legally, it was mine, and the trust fund was intact enough to secure my future. I didn't take everything from them. I didn't want revenge, just justice and peace. Instead, I returned to my grandparents' house, now truly my home, with a heart lighter than it had been in years. Today, as I sit on the porch I once saw in those old photos, watching the sunset paint the sky in warm hues, I realize that sometimes the deepest betrayals lead to the greatest gifts. The house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was love preserved through time. I've started a small business from here, making handmade crafts, and I've found friends who feel like real family. If there's one thing I've learned through the cold nights and the lonely days, it's that blood isn't always thicker than water, but true love, even from those who've passed, finds a way to protect you. My grandparents gave me not just a house, but the chance to rebuild my life on my own terms. And for that, I'm forever grateful. To anyone out there feeling abandoned, kicked out, or lost, hold on. Your own abandoned house might be waiting, ready to reveal its secrets and light your path home. Today, as I sit on the porch I once saw in those old photos, watching the sunset paint the sky in warm hues, I realize that sometimes the deepest betrayals lead to the greatest gifts. The house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was love preserved through time. I've started a small business from here, making handmade crafts, and I've found friends who feel like real family.